Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to all the live attendees to the Nora's Retail Up webinar series. And thank you very much for joining us today. My name is David Campbell. I'm the host for this morning's session. For those of you who don't know me, I've got a background, a career in leading marketing, commercial sales and e-commerce teams for retailers and wholesalers like Kmart, Independent Liquor Group, Barbecues Galore, Amart Furniture and Godfrey's. And I currently lead the commercial sales and marketplace seller acquisition team for Barbecues Galore. I also consult to tech vendors on retailing and how best to connect with retailers. So this morning, before I introduce the fellow panelists, I'm going to introduce the topic. And our topic today is, do you have the customer experience happiness factor? Big smile. So in this session, we're going to be exploring how Endeavour Drinks Group partner with FullStory's digital experience intelligence platform to identify the unknown unknowns in their customer journeys, how they then developed customer-driven roadmaps and implemented enhanced data-driven practices across the business, all resulting in superior levels of customer experience and happier customers. We'll also be looking to share some insights on how you can get the C customer experience or CX happiness factor for your business too. So joining me on the panel today, we've got two distinguished guests. We have Anisha. Anisha is the customer experience. Good morning, Anisha. Hello. Hey. Is the customer experience product manager for Endeavour Drinks Group. And for those of you, Endeavour Drinks Group is one of the largest drinks retailers across Australia and New Zealand. There's over 1,600 stores with brands like BWS and Dan Murphy's. There's over 330 hotels nationally through the ALH group, and just reported in the financial year sales of 11.6, just a tiny amount of money in sales for the financial year. So Anisha is an expert in customer experience and experimentation. She has extensive experience in enabling cross-functional teams with qualitative and quantitative insights to remove friction and frustration, ensuring flawless digital experiences and journey. Welcome, Anisha.
Thanks, David.
Our second panelist is Matt Perks, and Matt is the Regional Vice President of Australia and New Zealand for FullStory. And FullStory we're going to learn a little bit more about, but they provide a complete visibility into how customers interact online with the business, with actionable insights, all designed to improve business results. And Matt's got over a decade of experience partnering with leading brands to enable teams to better leverage the power of data and developing leading digital experiences and customer roadmaps. Welcome, Matt.
David. Thanks, excited to be here.
At the end of the session, 15 minutes prior to the end of the session, we'll have around 15 minutes dedicated to Q&A. There's a Q&A button on the bottom of the webinar. We encourage attendees to post questions throughout the session. We'll get to those at the end of the session. So yeah, please put any questions into the Q&A section, not to the chat, and then we'll go from there. Right, with all that said and done, let's get started. Anisha, we've been part of a big business, Endeavour Drinks Group. We talked about the size and scale of it. What were your observations about EDG prior to joining it? What were the good things that you saw? What were they doing well before you joined the business?
Yeah, so very interesting, right? When I actually started at Endeavour, the whole environment was quite driven towards customer experience. And what I mean by that is we had all of our digital assets up. We had a website, we have an app running, all of that. We were probably doing quantitative data quite well. And what I mean by quantitative data is, basic tracking, like number of visitors, how many page views do we have to the homepage, how long are they spending on the website, those types of things. It was quite robust, set up in a pretty good way for us to be able to report on our metrics, track insights, be able to understand our customers from that quantitative lens overall. It was also a very interesting time for us because we were in a space where we wanted to set up measurement frameworks. And what that means is, being able to set up something like a North Star metric for our business. What does first level metrics mean? How do we help drive that growth? And we were in the process of defining all of these along with customer personas, archetypes. What are the different customers that we have coming onto our website? How do they behave? And I think that was very interesting to see because a company of this size, starting off at a very basic level, it was a good opportunity for me to sort of be there from the start, I would say.
It's excellent. And culturally, the business was very supportive of it, CX driven, obviously. You've got the support from the direction from the leadership of the business down. That's obviously an important part.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had just about gone into an agile framework of working, and we had set up our digital business, which is actually called Endeavour X, where we look at design, data, and digital. And we had a whole team sort of now working towards digital in the process of setting up these whole measurement frameworks. And there's a lot of culture in terms of being able to drive digital from top to bottom. So yeah, I would agree so.
Okay, good. And so what were your first observations around the opportunities? What were the pain points and what were the things that you knew needed to get top of the list?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, right, we were really good at doing quantitative data, but every now and then we used to see a metric drop. And I think this is quite common, right? We see a number of visitors drop on the homepage, and then we just want to understand why. Why is that really happening? And while you're able to get into that sort of detail with your quantitative data itself, it gets really hard to actually answer that question of why with just numbers. So that's when you really want.
So what's the insight out of the number, which is obviously the important part?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's exactly why we started down this journey of qualitative data. And examples of qualitative data is probably session recordings, heat maps, customer interviews, something like that. And we started trying to explore how we can understand from the customer itself as to what's really going wrong. Why did we actually see this drop in visitors or say add to cart? So how can we probably help fix this so that it makes it a more seamless customer experience for them. So I think that was one of the opportunities. Another one, and that's one that we're still trying to solve for, is being able to look at customer experience from a more omnichannel and a holistic experience, right? Ever so often we do think of, when we think of customer experience, we probably think of desktop, web, app, and we think about it in a very linear fashion. We think about how they went from homepage to probably a product detail page to add to cart to checkout, but that's not really how it works, is it? It actually goes, they probably saw product in store, they came onto the app, they went to the website, that's how it is. And just trying to understand how this entire customer journey works end to end, that is a problem, an opportunity that I think we've, at least started the journey on, but I think very far away from really solving it 100%.
Yeah. And number one for you is what?
Putting customers first, being able to make sure that we have clean customer data, being able to make sure we can parse that data and drive actionable insights out of that, right? And I think that's where FullStory comes into picture for us, being able to answer the why for us.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that's good. Thank you. And Matt, more broadly, from a retailer, an online retailer perspective, what do you see as the collective pain points? What are people doing well, and what do you think needs a lot of addressing?
Yeah, absolutely. What we're definitely seeing in the market is businesses are starting to realize that answers to problems of digital experience reside in the data. And put simply, if you don't have the data, they're not going to have the answers. So with that, and I think this is what Anish is talking to, there's been a shift in the way businesses are thinking about collecting their data. If you think about traditional product analytics tools, businesses like EDG have to say, this is what we want to know about our users. Let's map it backwards and then instrument code and tag events across our website so we can track and monitor that behavior. Now, there's a number of pitfalls related with that paradigm. The first one is this fallacy that you know everything on your users already and you know what you want to track. The second piece is once you do that, it's leaning on technical resources to instrument code and tag events. So what we've seen, BWS is one of them, is recognizing there's another methodology you can partake in, and that's this capture all methodology. And FullStory is one of those technologies that gives you the ability to capture everything a user does out of the box with no instrumentation. And what that really gives the business is that ability to uncover these unknown unknowns that Anisha was talking to. So where are the points of friction, where are the performance issues occurring to your customers that you otherwise wouldn't be aware of? And what's driving that behavior? So really that shift in data is what we're seeing.
And with the need for data collections, obviously, where do retailers have been talking about for sometimes, where do you think people are on the journey? Do you think a lot of them are getting there in terms of at least the collection point, or do you think there's still a long way to go?
I think it's only just beginning. I think there's those traditional product analytics tools that have been around for quite some time. And what we're seeing is a lot of product managers in the market are realizing that, yes, it's manual, and yes, it's only giving you a part of the picture. It's giving you the who, what, and the when, but to Anisha's point, it's not really giving you the why. So it might show you, hey, this many users are clicking on this button, which is down on the previous period, or conversion rates on this page are lower than what we anticipated. But really, like, why? And you need that data to be able to answer those questions.
And the ability to marry up in-store data with online data.
Yeah, that's obviously the nirvana for a lot of e-commerce retailers, is being able to understand that cross-device journey. So whether it's understanding the journey from web to native mobile apps, all the way to in-store bricks and mortar, being able to have that single view of the customer and understand how their digital journey might impact their journey in-store is obviously the nirvana for a lot of customers.
Yeah. So I come across a lot of retailers, and the conversation is about, yes, we're collecting the data. No, we don't know what to do with it or where to start. And I think we'll give some tips to people a bit later on as we go through. But you're right, that collection point is obviously vital now. And for those who aren't, then yeah, the journey, where to start, how to manipulate it, and then actually what to do with the data is still a big question. People have bought, in some cases, expensive tools and not been able to drive them and deliver. They haven't had the resource behind a EDG, for instance. And some of the people on this webinar, I'm sure, will come from smaller businesses that might need some assistance with those sorts of things, and we can talk a bit more about that further. Okay, so Anisha, you've shared and Matt, thank you. You shared the insights into EDG before you got there. What was your approach to identifying what you didn't know, what we're calling the unknown unknowns, and then bridging the CX gap? So how did you get a clearer and more omnified view of the customer journeys?
Yeah, so I think one of the key partners was FullStory for us, right? Onboarding FullStory was quite seamless. We did a trial for about 2 months or so, where we had just put it on the page. It was I would say like a 15-minute implementation that we did, which was quite good. And we were able to instantly start seeing some session recordings. And these session recordings didn't just sort of be, what customers are doing, but also the background, what are some of the errors they're facing? How are they, how are some of the APIs failing, for example, right? How long is the site taking to load? So these types of things. And I think being able to just see these things it really changed the game for us. It sort of really helped understand what those unknowns are before we actually go into solving for the problem.
So what were sorry, I cut you off there, Anisha, but what surprised you the most? What was the insight that you gathered that from all the experience you've had? What was the insight that surprised you the most about what you didn't know before?
I think something that surprised me the most was we're trying to solve for these really big problems, right? Like, how do you make a fancy cart and checkout, or how do you really improve customer experience from having a very fancy website? But it's actually the very basic things that matter, right? Like being able to make sure the site loads correctly at the right time, being able to make sure that add to carts work fine for our customers across all devices, across all screen sizes, where are they coming from, their marketing channels, just being able to see all of these, and being able to get your basics right. I think that's really, really important for us, and that was quite surprising for me to see that we're solving these really big problems, these big rocks that all, but there are some basic things that we had to fix as well.
Yeah, there's always, and that list always continues to get longer, not shorter, I think, which is one of the more you know, the more you have to do, really, isn't it? Yeah. So, and in terms of an implementation or a business buy into it, what process did you go through the business to say, yes, we think FullStory is the way to go, and
Yeah, as you mentioned, I think you could get a really fancy tool. End of the day, adoption is a really big thing for the tool. So it was quite crucial for us to have a lot of members on board from the beginning. So be it the design teams, so the UX, UI designers, be it some of the CX tribe leads and chapter leads. So in an agile structure, that's essentially a manager and a general manager level, right? Being able to make sure that these guys are on board, they understand what the problem is. And also seeing how it fits in with our current ways of working and not really a tool that's standalone. So being able to integrate this with all of the tools that we've already got, our workflows that we've already got. I think that was very crucial for us. Going through the process itself, like I said, there was a trial upfront, and then we had to sort of list down a few use cases where we said, if these are sort of solved for, and we know why these issues are really happening, it makes it easier for us to then go, cool, let's sort of get this tool on board and then make a business case essentially.
Excellent. Okay. And Matt, how do you think FullStory carved a pathway for EDG?
Yeah, I think, look, Anisha touched upon the proof of concept. And I think for the listeners on the webinar, whether you're an early stage growth company or you're an enterprise style business like EDG, most businesses are quite skittish in running proof of concepts. And the reason being is it doesn't matter what, whether it sits in the MarTech stack. Typically you have to learn the code, instrument APIs, you have to train your team. There's a lot of technical debt, time and energy revolves around that proof of concept process. FullStory, we pride ourselves on being very easy to deploy and very easy to use. As Anisha mentioned, to instrument FullStory, took her all of a couple hours. I'm not sure if you said 15 minutes there, but FullStory is 16 lines of code that you load onto your website. Once you do that, we're capturing everything users do across your website. So every button clicked and every mouse scroll and every text that they change, there's no additional code you have to do. And
so
I think.
So Matt, you mentioned before about in the first part of the question about it's auto capture. So talk to us a bit more in depth about that, about the tagging versus how auto capture does and what that extra depth of data does for a business in terms of insight.
Yeah, absolutely. So like if I walk you through what the process looks like, when you drop the snippet of code on, FullStory is capturing and indexing everything your users do. So there's no need to go ahead and tag the events that you think they're going to trigger off or the pages you think they're going to go to. Now, by doing that, a number of things occur. You get that line of sight to understand those unknown unknowns. Where is the point of friction or performance issues or those sticking points causing users to drop out of funnel? But you also get the ability to have that qualitative view of the user. And that resonates through what we call a session replay. It's almost like a YouTube video. So it's a high fidelity recreation of that user's journey, exactly how they experienced it. And why that's so important is you might get from a traditional analytics tool, hey, our conversion rates are down 10% on the prior period. And the question comes, well, why? By watching that session replay, it'll give you invaluable understanding around what's driving that result. Perhaps a particular feature or functionality that you released on the website actually isn't rendering as you would have hoped when you pushed it to production. So getting that type of information and understanding, okay, that's what's driving the quantitative data becomes really powerful. Now, the proof of concept process, I think that's really where we hang our hat on. We're running hundreds of these at any moment where we encourage customers to say, hey, drop the snippet of code on. We will show you what's impacting your customers and causing the drop off. We quantify it and show you how to fix it. So it's a very slick process. I think in every instance, we have customers like Anisha have this aha moment to say, wow, holy crap, we never actually knew that was impacting our customers.
Right. Which is what we're looking for here is that, what are those moments, and Anisha's already shared some of those, so it's legacy systems tend to be, if you don't tag, you don't capture it. If you don't capture it, you can't learn from it. And what you're saying is that FullStory's got the ability to capture every interaction without tagging, is that what we're saying?
That's exactly it. And usually, I can sense people listening on the call will say, wow, well, how do we go through all that data that FullStory is capturing? The ease of use, and I think maybe Anisha will touch upon this as we go on, to be able to automatically identify out of the box in a proactive manner where users are getting impacted. is a really nice functionality of FullStory.
So it just gives you that endless list of things to do in Issue, which you've touched on before there, which is good.
And just to chime in there, right? I think one of the biggest things of auto capture is just when you start digging deeper with traditional and analytics tools, at some point you get stuck and you're like, oh, we don't really have tagging on that, so we don't know the answer to that. Whereas with auto capture,
it's a common thing you hear. Yep.
Yep. So with something like this, you can start digging deeper, almost to a really granular level of, did they search for this? Did they click on this very specific button? Did they click the back button here? Or, what happened? And you don't really have to think about, have we really set up tagging for it before that, X months before, or anything like that. So I think that's a really good feature.
Okay, that's good. So you've had FullStory on for how long?
Almost 2.5 years now.
Okay. So let's get to what were the outcomes? What have apart from what have you learned, what have you implemented, and then what have been the actual outcomes for the business in terms of customer journey, in terms of financial results, those sorts of things. So let's explore that a bit more.
Yeah, so when we actually started off with the implementation of FullStory, we didn't actually go big bang, let's do a big implementation across all websites, do 100% capture. We actually did it in stages. So we did website first, we then moved on to the app, and we probably started off with about 20% capture. And the really interesting thing was, even with that 20% capture, we were able to see a lot of interesting results, right? There is a concept in FullStory called funnels, where you can essentially build a very basic funnel, which is sort of, a person came onto the homepage, added a product cart, checked out, right? Just something as basic as that. And it actually gives you predictions as to where things could be going wrong. So it could be something like site speed. It could be an error message that's popping up. It could be that people are not really able to log in properly, and it actually predicts these things for you. And from there on, what we do is actually take all of those data that we're seeing, build a hypothesis around it. So if people are not able to log in, what's the problem that they're facing? If it's something as simple as the API is not working, it's quite a straightforward workflow where we raise that with our developers and we get that fixed, right? But if it's something that people are clicking here, but it's not really a clickable button, then that's a problem we probably need to fix, right? From a design point of view. So we build a hypothesis. We say, cool, people think this is a clickable element, whereas it's not clickable. How do we solve for this from a design point of view? So we get the data, the design, and sort of try to solve for that problem.
So it really is quite granular. It's like it's this button, this movement, this, okay, so it's, that would just, that, as we said, there's a lot of things you can fix it. Structurally, did it point out anything that needs to change from an overall business perspective, or legacy systems, anything else that needed to be at a more macro level rather than at a micro level?
Yeah, so I think at a macro level, FullStory fit really well into our workflows, right? And what we had to sort of fix, like I said, one of the most shocking things for us was the site speed itself. Being able to think of what legacy architectures we're using so far, why is it really taking that long, what APIs are loading at what time, being able to sort of understand that and then sort of go into a bit more detail of how do we actually fix for this from an architectural view rather than just design or, front end concepts itself.
Okay. Yeah, good. All right. And Matt, more broadly, again, from a broad retailer perspective, what are the insights you've got around what FullStory has been able to bring, to retailers, and what other, basically, how can deliver to the retail industry as a whole benefit from plugging those CX gaps?
Yeah, sure. So ultimately, David, like most FullStory customers are really working towards three common goals. One is winning, growing, and retaining loyal users. So all about the retention piece of how you make your users continue to come back. The second piece is around increasing revenue through conversions. So understanding where those sticking points are across your funnels to be able to allow your customers to have a great experience to convert quicker and more often. And the third one there is being able to find, prioritize, and fix digital experience problems faster. And that one really plays into, if we think about product support and engineering, really streamlining that workflow. As Anisha said, being able to understand, where are the JavaScript bugs or errors occurring across your page that you otherwise wouldn't have known of, and how do you democratize that data to be able to fix that issue as quick as possible?
So what are some, without naming other businesses, obviously they're not part of the call here, but what are some of the other successes that you've had with the businesses, some examples that you might be able to demonstrate?
Yeah, so to give an example, one of the biggest, I guess, air carriers in Australia, by utilizing FullStory, they were able to reduce their median time to detection. So when they understand a particular issue has occurred to when they're being able to remediate that issue by 60%.
Right.
So very quickly being able to not only reduce the time to remediate the issue, but also reduce the number of tickets proactively.
Right.
Now that's really on that third piece, being able to find and replicate and fix issues. Really, the biggest needle mover that we see is around that conversions piece. If we see we're able to identify at a statistically significant level what's causing users to drop out of funnels, and we're able to move that needle even 0.5% in terms of a conversion rate, that has a material impact on the bottom line for an organization.
Yeah, mathematically, that always adds up. So yeah, converting more people obviously is going to make a big difference. So in terms of retention of people, does it have any impact there from a retention and loyalty?
Yeah, I mean, like there's some great statistics that came out from PwC not long ago that was saying 1 in 3 users will leave a brand after a single poor experience.
Right.
And 90% of those users will leave the brand without giving any feedback.
Right.
So by having that qualitative understanding and understanding the behavior that they've experienced and being able to visualize why they've had a poor experience gives you that ability to be more proactive. So by being able to be proactive, you can fix those issues before they get to this point of significantly impacting the organization.
Okay. So just, that leads to a key point around how people are interacting with the businesses. And obviously a lot of businesses are seeing mobile first, up to 85% of interactions in a lot of cases. Digital traffic is coming from mobile. So Anisha, can you just give us a bit more insight into how EDG partnered with FullStory just to help turn the light on the mobile first experiences and what the outcomes there were?
Yeah, so like I mentioned right at the beginning, right, omnichannel customer view or a single customer view is one of the biggest things we're trying to solve for. And FullStory was actually a stepping stone for us in that, right? What we were able to do is be able to visualize how a customer is really going from the website to the app. What are they really finding interesting there? Where do they end up making a purchase, right? And like you mentioned, a lot of the times it starts off with the app or the mobile websites that we've got. So being able to design mobile first sort of started off at EDG because of what we were actually seeing in FullStory. So being able to look at customers, they were facing problems in trying to navigate through the mobile because it was a desktop site that was fit for purpose for mobile, right? So yeah. We were very clearly able to see that, and I think that's where while it is a very basic design principle to be mobile first from a design point of view, I think that stepping stone actually started off from FullStory and being able to give us that view of how customers are actually going from mobile to app to, the desktop, probably going in store and making a purchase, using their phone in store itself to do a bit of navigation and searching and things like that. So it was a very important place for us. And I think now more and more it's become quite evident that app monthly active users and those types of metrics are sort of one of our top North Star metrics where we're constantly tracking it. And I could actually give you a use case where we launched an app, new version of the app, and we actually saw not a lot of people were able to set their delivery store. And we actually saw a 13% decline in add to carts, which was quite significant for us. And immediately we were able to go into FullStory, saw a notification that says there are a lot of rage clicks happening here.
Rage clicks, okay, yeah.
Yeah, very interesting concept. I think it's a very FullStory term. But rage clicks.
Tell us a bit about it. Go on.
Yeah, so rage click is basically when a person is machine gun clicking on a device, right? So they're quite frustrated. They're constantly tapping on their phone, expecting something to work there. And that's actually captured within FullStory as a rage click. And you can actually set up an alert for that. And we were able to see rage clicks were skyrocketing on this delivery button. We're like, oh no, something's wrong. So we need to go back and fix it or do a rollback immediately, because that actually helped us save a lot in revenue as well and improve those add to carts, right? So I think these sort of problems surface first on the app or the mobile before it does on desktop. So it actually talks a lot about how the world's really moving towards a more mobile first or app first environment.
Any insights from you, Matt, in terms of the mobile first side of things?
Yeah, I mean, just to echo what Anisha said, that's absolutely what we're seeing in the market. It's not just EDG. We're seeing like FullStory works across native mobile apps and websites. And that gives you obviously unified analytics across all digital environments. And this is typically a gap for traditional analytics tools, with businesses having difficulty understanding cross-device engagement. So when a user goes onto the desktop and does some browsing, but then potentially goes onto the mobile app and makes the final step to the purchase, or vice versa, why did they do that? Is the journey easier on one device as opposed to another? Does a customer prefer to do browsing and actually make the final step in completing an order on the app? So really giving you that line of sight around the cross-device engagement across having a single view of that customer.
So you get the view, you get the context as well, which is the important. So you know why they're doing it, where they're doing it. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, and I think, like, you know, Anisha spoke to this. Some of those friction heuristics are very powerful in understanding the experience of the customer. So a rage click is a really common one. Dead click, for example. A dead click is where a user's clicking on a particular component of the site, but it doesn't actually take them to a different part of the site. It's not a clickable component. So that's an example of a customer showing you, hey, this is our suggested happy path. This is how you could make your website more intuitive. So FullStory is constantly building out more of these friction heuristics to give you an understanding of where users are not having a delightful experience.
So it's almost like a heat mapping solution to a certain degree. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got, just to remind everybody in the audience that we're taking questions in a few minutes' time. So please jump on and give us your Q&A through the Q&A section of Zoom there. We really welcome the interaction. That you've got some experienced and intuitive people here ready to answer your questions. So please jump on. Before we conclude, we've got one last area we'd really like to explore. And, you know, we talked before we got on the call, Matt and Anisha, about the size of the audience. And we might have some people at the enterprise size and some people at the startup, for want of a better term. We're looking for advice that you would give to people looking to start down this journey. And, you know, internally, what do you think were the biggest hurdles in driving your enhancements, Anisha? What do you think you needed to overcome?
Yeah, so you know, while we are quite a big enterprise business, I'd say we started off very small. And, you know, what that means is, like I said, we started off with web only. We did just 20% capture. We eventually moved on to app. And I think that really helped us gain a holistic view of what we could do with the tool, right? If I were to give, you know, one specific piece of advice, it would be start small. Don't think of, you know, boiling the ocean. There are a lot of devices, a lot of customer types, a lot of data that you probably already have, and, you know, making sure you use that data in a more actionable way.
So you want to hit the ground walking, for want of a better term, and
yes,
you know, don't be overwhelmed by all the points, and learn and move on quickly. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, Anisha, cut you off. Go on.
Yeah, so you pretty much covered, you know, what I was saying. So yeah, going from being a small sort of setup that we had with FullStory, we've now sort of grown into full capture across all of our devices, brands, and being able to think of what it means at a brand level to be, you know, have customer journey be more holistic. I think that's probably the one piece of advice I'd give.
Integration with other platforms that you're working with, integrate seamlessly, no problems.
Yeah, so we've been able to integrate with Medallia, which is our voice of customer tool as well, with Jira, which is our workflows tool. We've also been able to integrate with things like Slack every time there's an alert or anything like that. So you don't have to constantly keep going into the tool and constantly trying to check for, is something gone wrong or not? So yeah, absolutely. I think one of the best things to do is actually try to find a way for the tool to fit into your current ways of working rather than trying to reinvent or make the tool isolated, right? I think that's probably a good one as well.
And that the assistance of FullStory in terms of helping guide that path of doing the small things and moving on, Matt, is that something the team helped with there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think FullStory is a platform in itself. Every business wants to be able to make data-driven decisions. I think where FullStory fits in that is making data-driven decisions that are customer-centric. By having that session replay, it gives you a far better understanding around what decisions you should be making to improve the experience of your customers. Whether if you're an early stage growth company or an enterprise business, reporting, so quantitative data to tell you statistics on a page is often very hard to draw out the insights that you need to act upon. But having that session replay to underpin all that quantitative data becomes really powerful, because then you can link it back to exactly a user experience. So I think it's important to kind of evaluate where the organization sits on the data maturity curve, and how comfortable your organization is using data. What FullStory really tries to do is lower the bar in terms of technical acumen needed to be able to consume the data. So it's very easy for a non-technical user to be able to understand what insights they need to act upon based off having that session replay.
And that's important for people starting off in their journeys where they may not be technical necessarily, but need to understand technical people and technical information. So if it's simplified in such a way that it can give you those insights and you can implement and then move on. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, they either have got a really lean team themselves, or they want their team to be focusing on something else. Alternatively, they might not have the budget. They may not have hit that scale to be able to have the best of breed in every single tool across different categories. So really being thoughtful around what outcomes you're looking to drive and matching that up into what a tool can deliver.
Great. Anisha, what would you have done differently in your approach to increase customer experience happiness? If you started again, what would you have done differently?
I think knowing the world we're in now, we very much did start with desktop. I would have probably started with capture on mobile and started thinking about app first, because that is, now becoming more and more a key player within our ecosystem. So that is definitely one thing I would have done differently. From a culture point of view, I think one of the things I would have done differently is from the beginning being able to get the engineering teams on board, or the developers on board as well. We were very conscious about design teams being on board with a tool like FullStory, but being able to get architectural and the engineering teams on board was also a learning for me.
Great. Yeah, that makes sense too. In terms of other businesses, Matt, they've gone down the process there. Do you think there's any learnings that they could have, you could share on their behalf around implementing FullStory, and what's the best way to go about it?
Yeah, I think Anisha's process was pretty accurate. I would say trying before you buy. Obviously, the proof is in the pudding, and most technologies are a lot of heavy lift to be able to test out, and that's a testament to the way in which they were architectured. So typically, I would say test the product, see, run it for a couple of weeks, see what insights it delivers. And what we typically will show our customers is they don't want to take the script off once it's running, because typically it does show you a lot of really great insights you otherwise wouldn't be conscious of. Yeah.
So once you're bought into it, it seems to make sense and becomes self-fulfilling in terms of the result. That makes sense. Anisha, what do you see is next for EDG in terms of customers' experience journeys?
Yeah. So one of the things we're continuously trying to solve is the single view of customer, being able to sort of get that holistic view across not just digital but in store as well. So that's definitely one, and sort of building a culture of experimentation, test and learn with tools like FullStory. I think that's another that we're trying to focus on as well, where all teams are actually have access to have access to the tool, being able to day in, day out, go in, look at insights, being able to build hypotheses, test and learn from that, putting customers first. That's another that we're sort of working towards as well.
So once you've got those insights, what other tools have we had to bring on board?
So once we've got the insights, a couple of other tools, I think from a single customer view, one we've got is Amperity to sort of give us that CDP or single customer view lens. Another we've got for test and learn is just the Adobe suite, right? Adobe Analytics, Adobe Target, all of those sort of working in tandem as well, to sort of give us insights, learnings, being able to run 50-50 A/B tests and things like that. So it's been very helpful to sort of democratize these tools across the business itself.
Very good, excellent. And Matt, again, from another client perspective, what are you seeing they're bringing on board to actually enhance their suite of offering and deliver on the CS happiness experience?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of things to unpack there. I think FullStory is definitely going along that journey with our customers. The product has evolved significantly over the last couple of years. Up until about 6 months ago, FullStory was best in class in collecting the clickstream behavioral data, everything that's occurring across your website. Now we're starting to ingest server-side data. So if you've got data that's sitting in a third-party cloud tool or somewhere on a server that's still important around your customer, but not necessarily the clickstream data that's occurring across your website, but you want to be able to combine the two to understand how that impacts their journey, FullStory can now utilize that as well. So that's one piece. We're absolutely seeing like our best-in-class customers democratizing the data across different parts of the organization and to different teams. The best piece, I think, is being able to leverage the capabilities of FullStory in other tools that are already existing in customers' tech stacks. So the A/B testing one, for example, we're seeing FullStory best-in-class customers are using the platform to fuel experimentation. That is for ideation and prioritization around what A/B tests they should be running next. Now, you can use FullStory to build those hypotheses. You can run that experiment in your A/B test, but you can also federate that result back into FullStory to validate, okay, we see variant B is outperforming variant A, but why? And then you can get that answer. Another like really common use case is the support use case. So if businesses are using ticketing technology like Jira or Zendesk, for example, before a support agent actually opens the ticket, they can actually get a link to that session URL of that particular user and understand, okay, what was their journey before they raised this issue with the business?
Right.
And again, not changing the workflow.
It's factual as opposed to opinionated. It's it's we think instead of we know, right?
And I think it's also, not changing the way your employees already operate. It's just adding capabilities to the way they already do their work.
Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. We've had a couple of questions come in for the panelists, which has been good. And before we get onto that, it's what advice would you give to any retailers looking to head down this journey, Anisha, starting down the path of CX again? Is there anything you'd see as a particular insight that you'd like to share with those potentially from smaller businesses?
Yeah, I think the first thing is make sure we're capturing data at all in the first place. Make sure the data that you're capturing is actionable. It's clean data and it's not just sitting somewhere. And we have either a person or hopefully a team looking at what we can really do with this data, and more importantly, get data to be the center of your decision making. I think that's very powerful, and nobody can really argue with data, can they?
It's hard to. So it's very hard to. We've got a couple of questions, as I said, come in, and we actually very much welcome many more questions from the group. And the first question is, who do you think has the best happiness factor in the industry? Anisha, you may be a little bit biased around this one. Who else do you think has the best happiness factor from your experience in other retailers?
I I would definitely be lying if I said Endeavour did, but I think there are a few best-in-class, businesses that are doing this really well. Specifically, a few SaaS businesses. If I were to talk about Atlassian, Canva, I think they're doing it really well in terms of really putting customers first and being able to get to that aha moment really quickly.
Yeah.
Prove value of the tool that they've got or the website that they've got, and I think that's really powerful, and it would be very interesting to see ourselves there very soon.
So out of the drinks industry, what are other retailers? Any thoughts around that?
Probably need to give it a bit of thought, but I think
Yeah.
out of the retailers that I've seen, I think some of the really good brands that I've seen is Maya. They're probably doing it quite well in terms of being able to, really surface what customers are looking for with, good personalization and things like that. So yeah, that's probably one that sticks out for me.
And then obviously their results are starting to show through as well. Matt, any thoughts around who else do you think has got the best happiness factor, and not necessarily a FullStory customer, if that's that would help?
I mean, from an e-commerce standpoint, I would say businesses like Kogan Appliances Online, David Jones from a retail standpoint, are usually quite good in like that CX space.
Yeah, the Appliances Online team do a great job. There's no doubt about that in terms of looking after the customer and putting that customer first. Every time you hear their team talk, it is seen to be the heart and soul of them, and they're award winning as well as successful. So yeah, that's a very good point. A second question we've got here is again from an anonymous attendee: how do Australian retail customer experience insights compare internationally? So what are we seeing that may be a little bit different to what's happening overseas?
Probably I can give that a go first. I think one of the biggest things we see is traffic volumes are quite different, right, between international websites to Australian websites, especially if you compare like the US market to here. We see drastic differences in traffic volumes and being able to actually personalize for these traffic volumes as well. But I think overall insights, being able to put it in terms of user personas, archetypes, and being able to draw insights makes it that much more easier because you have a lesser sort of traffic size, and I think that really stands out for me. And I think internationally, we're definitely on par with all of the app technologies that we've started to use with native app and things like that. So that's probably my insight on that. Matt, you want to add?
Yeah, my 2 cents. I think just coming from a vendor standpoint, international retailers, particularly coming out of the US, they're probably more inclined to take a leap of faith on new technology. If I talk to FullStory, we've actually been around since 2014, but we're by any means not a household name yet in Australia. In the US, there's a lot of fantastic new technology that comes out, and typically e-commerce retailers based in there are really keen to test it out, trial it, where I think there's usually this added layer with retailers, potentially in Australia, to be able to validate first and get some comfort that, you do what you say on the tin.
Yep, fair enough. That makes sense. Yep, you got to do what you say. And I think that's, some people, as we said earlier, and from a retailer's perspective, may have bought the Ferrari but don't know how to drive it, or find that the Ferrari needs the clear coat and then the add-ons, and it goes on and on. But yeah, something that sort of does what the sticker says and for what you buy it and can implement it easily is obviously a tool that's worth thinking about.
And David, I think you've touched on a good point there. Obviously, you can have the analytics and the best insights in the world, but if you don't have the team to be able to action on them, that's another challenge in itself. Yeah. So I have noticed some commentary in the market, particularly in ANZ, there is this challenge in finding great resources and great talent to be able to action on those insights. Whereas I think the depth and breadth of the talent pool in international markets is probably larger than Australia.
Yeah, I think you'd see a lot of nodding heads if around the audience, if you could actually see the audience at this stage. It's obviously, the resourcing side of things is a very well-known challenge for everybody as we go through. I've got one more question here at the moment, and but still got the opportunity for anyone who wants to jump on and ask the question. This one may have been touched on throughout the conversation, but it's a specific question around what is the biggest challenge you've experienced in terms of stitching together the in-store and online experience to create an omnichannel view?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges for us is when a person enters a store, until they really make a purchase, there's no other insight we've got, right? What are the products they're looking at? What is their browsing journey like? What are some of the things, probably events in store that they find interesting, offers that they're finding interesting? All of this is a big black box until they make a purchase, which we know probably is a gift for someone, or is something that they drink on a regular basis. I think it's quite a black box for us to actually understand customer journey in store. While after they make a purchase, the biggest challenge we've got in stitching that data is just being able to get all of this together and have one tool do all the work for us in terms of stitching it up together. So we've got unique IDs that actually work between the different tools that we've got. But I think all of this is quite limited to once you're logged in or once you're a member, right? Unknown customers, or being able to track all of this for customers who are not members, who probably don't scan their loyalty or their rewards cards. It's quite hard for us to actually track back into what their online experience is to sort of facilitate this in-store experience. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges we've had. And that's something that we're trying to solve for.
Very good. Matt, any thoughts or insights you'd like to share there?
Yeah, I think obviously there's a long way to come in being able to understand in-store versus the digital experience. There's still a long way to go in terms of developing loyalty and reward programs that customers use on a regular basis, and it's sticky enough and exciting enough for them to be able to do that. And that's one method that we're seeing very common, to be able to have that unique ID that you can tailor back to their digital experience.
So, my experience, I think, it's probably a little bit pre-COVID, where things obviously changed quite a bit for everybody, but some tools that we had in place obviously measured traffic online, we had some tools to measure traffic in store, and there was an absolute direct correlation between the number of people coming through the website to the number of people visiting the stores for the businesses that I was a part of at that time. And that was an insight that was also shared by some other retailers. And that parallel seems to have split through COVID and moved off quite a bit. But that information was actually quite valuable, because you saw that without necessarily a causation, you definitely had a correlation between the two sets of numbers. So, one of the ways I've been, looking at when talking to people is, what's if we don't have necessarily the cause of things, what's the correlation, and then try and look for the cause of things. And I think that's part of the journey with FullStory and getting that insight and information that you're able to provide there. Any other insights you'd like to share, Matt or Anisha? Last insights. We haven't got any further questions, and I've really enjoyed the session today. Thank you very much. But any further thoughts, Matt?
That's really it for me. I think I'll see if Anisha's got anything to add there.
Okay.
Yeah, no, nothing for me specifically, but thank you very much for having us. I think this was a great opportunity for me.
Very good. Okay, thanks to everybody for joining us today. I think it's been a great discussion and really insightful. Thank you so much. Thank you for the time and everybody in the audience joining us. And just going to remind everybody that the recording will be posted on Nora TV later today. So if you need to go back and look through that information and see any insights, and you can also hit myself or Anisha or Matt up on LinkedIn. I'm sure they'll help you out if you need to make contact. Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.